Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Pi Chat Live. This is a very exciting, and it has to be said, very timely Pi Chat Live as I come back from going global Africa a couple of weeks ago. So today's title is Unlocking Potential, Harnessing Africa as a Key Source for International Student Growth. And today we'll be talking about making the most of a huge growth region for universities around the world, and one that has remained largely untapped despite its enormous potential for recruiting international students. So as a continent, and this is something we heard a lot at the Going Global conference, Africa has an enormous youth demographic, making up 60 to 70% of the population. So obviously it's a no-brainer for universities around the world to throw their weight behind recruiting students from this emerging superpower. But as we'll hear, there are several barriers to this, including financial, administrative, and testing-based burdens, all of which we'll be getting into. And today I'm joined by two experts in the field from London Metropolitan University, David Estienne, who is the Regional Manager for Africa, and Mary Wunmi, who is the Senior International Officer for Africa, also from London Met. This is an interactive chat, so we want to hear from you, our audience. Pop your questions and the comments in the question field, which you will find by clicking the speech bubble on the right of the screen. Now, there are lots of you tuning in from all over the world, so we want to hear from you. Get your questions rolling and any comments that you want to share as well. So a little bit of housekeeping as well. This is going to be recorded live as we speak, so you will be able to watch this on replay if you want to. And why wouldn't you? We've got our two experts in here to chat all things about this really exciting topic. So I'm going to start us off with our first question. So I'm going to come to David first. What are some of the trends that you've identified from this market? Are there any noticeable trends in terms of maybe the types of courses that people are looking to study, or even where they're choosing to study?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Beth, and welcome everyone to this session. It's really good to be able to talk a little bit more about Africa and the bigger picture of what myself and Mary have experienced. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of trends. I've just come back myself last week from Kenya, and courses, like healthcare, nursing, other things like business, your traditional ones, law, engineering. We're looking into or at more arts-based as well, sort of like design, fashion. That's something that's become increasingly popular. More so now with the youth population, as you mentioned, Beth, we have, I think it's the highest youth population in the world in sub-Saharan Africa. So, they are tending to look at other courses rather than your traditional ones. AI, things of that nature, just sort of the sciences. That's what I would say really, is popular within the sub-Saharan African market.
I love to hear that. And we were talking backstage actually, and we've got both of our wonderful panelists sporting beautiful clothes. Are these both from African designers? Possibly
Absolutely.
from some of the emerging students that we're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that Mary and I sort of want to show the world how, flamboyant, how beautiful, how culturally aware, Africans are, even outside of Africa. We like to bring a little bit of Africa wherever we go. So, yeah, Mary's based in Nigeria, by the way.
Yes, so actually this is something I was going to ask. So Mary, you are in Nigeria, you're right in the thick of it in terms of the market. So what are you hearing from students when you're chatting to them?
Oh, yes. So what I'm hearing from, so thank you very much, by the way, for this opportunity. And thank you everyone for joining. My name is Mary. So yes, the trend among African students is still that the interest in studying abroad is still very high. A lot of people, a lot of families want to send their children abroad, and several people still want to go to do their postgraduate certificates abroad. However, there has been several challenges that has bedeviled the market, several of them that we are going to be looking into, from the currency issues to the dependent issues. We are going to be looking at all of those things, but the interest is still very high. Out of about 10 people want to go study abroad. A lot of people have planned for their children to study abroad, and UK happens to be one of the key markets that they are looking at. One of the reasons is because of the quality education that the UK promises, and the future post study, the future in the UK is also something that they look out for. So the interest is still very high among African students, but there are several challenges that they are looking at, and that's the reason for a bit of slow conversion. But the interest is still very high in the market.
Probably great for everyone to be hearing as well. I imagine lots of us who are tuning in are in the recruitment side of things, and it's really great to hear that there's still that appetite. And yeah, it's interesting that you're talking as well about so many students that you speak to wanting to study abroad. When I was having conversations in Nigeria, the sentiment was that it's not even that necessarily it's partly to do with the fact that it just isn't the infrastructure in country necessarily for everyone to study in Nigeria. And so that's part of the reason why there is this yen to go and study abroad as well. Do you think that's something that's playing a part too?
Absolutely.
Yes. So also,
sorry, Mary, carry on.
Okay, so the teeming population also accounts for the need, to study abroad. Nigeria alone have well over 200 million population, and most of this population accounts for young people, So a lot of them looking out to better themselves know that international education is a key factor in giving themselves a better resume. So they look out for international education. There are some schools, international schools I've been to that is the dream of every parent in that school to send their children abroad. Most of them don't even look at schools in Nigeria. And the truth is that the universities we have in country may not be able to cater for the teeming population of young people. So always, there'll always be this gap, always be this need, to go study abroad. So the need is there. The teeming population is a factor. The current educational institutions we have in country is a factor. And then the fact that some families already planned that their children will study abroad, irrespective of what is happening, is also a factor contributing to the increase, in demand for international education.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because we've talked a little bit before, and it's great to have the introduction that there are some currency issues, especially in Nigeria. So I'm going to come back to David on this, but how are you finding that that's affecting things like enrollments?
Well, it does, and it has impacted, enrollment, and it's not just, at London Met, it's across the sector because, Nigerians, with the currency fluctuation, it's not as if it's a 6-month fluctuation. This can be week to week, even day to day, which means it puts a lot of pressure on parents and students wanting to pay their deposits, wanting to, know that when they get to the UK, they can then pay the rest of the outstanding amount, because one minute you have the amount that's required, currency gets devaluated, and then it goes below the threshold you need, especially to, get your pass, and you find you got to start another 30 days. So it's, can be, very, very unpleasant to hear these sort of things from Nigerian students, not just Nigerian students, but African students in general, because currency devaluation happens outside of Nigeria as well. So it's just a fact of life at the moment. And I think Nigerians and Africans in general are very resilient, and they now, through agents that we speak to, we make sure they do things early, get the finances organized early, because these are issues that will come up. Don't work hard, work smarter. That's kind of the trend I found with, the devaluation in currencies. But, they're used to it by now. I'm not saying they enjoy it, but, you have to understand what's going to happen. You have to organize yourself around it.
Yeah, I mean, Mary, have you got anything to add to that, given that you're speaking live from Nigeria as things are happening?
Absolutely. In addition to what they have said, I'd like to write the issue currency. One, I'll call it the devaluation. The second one will be the instability issue. So there's something, the naira is currently devalued. So I'm speaking for Nigeria currently. The naira is currently being devalued so you need more naira, to convert to pounds to pay your tuition fees. And then the fact that it's unstable. So if it has devalued over a period of time and will remain stable, people will better plan, to save that funds and pay their tuition fee. But the fact that it's fluctuating almost on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, so you cannot properly plan, is also an issue that is bedeviling people paying their tuition fee. So within 2 weeks, it can change, and it can change within a percentage of 15 to 20%, as high as 15 to 20%. And that's an issue. So for example, sometime last week, a pound was exchanging for about 2,200 naira, and currently it's come down. It's currently exchanging for about 2,030 naira for £1. So that instability is also an issue. So if the naira has devalued over a period of time and is stable, it will give people ample time to plan. However, is devaluing and is unstable. So today is high, tomorrow is low, and all those things have caused issues with people planning their tuition. But just like David said, Nigerians are very resilient people. So you will keep advising them through our agents to make buffers or make provisions. So, for example, if you're expected to have so amount in your account for your studies, just add a bit of it, like give a buffer for 15 to 20% in case of, to cater for exchange rate devaluation and fluctuation. So if it gets higher, the better for you. If the naira goes lower, then oh, it's all bad. But Nigerians are resilient people, like he said, and they are trying to, all this affected conversion a great deal. Or you can see that they are putting those funds together to ensure to meet with their payments.
Yeah, I think it's really good that because we're talking about Africa, sub-Saharan Africa as a region. Obviously, it's huge. There are so many countries that feed into that, and I think it's really important that we are differentiating about which countries in particular that we're speaking about, because I think, as you'll both agree, some of these issues are going to be very, very different. It could be a completely different story in a different country. Is that something you guys are seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, some of the currencies and the stability we find in, say, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana's just finished their election and they have a new president, well, former ex-president. You are going to find the little differences, and even, further down, South Africa. So it's not particularly a one size fits all, but we all have to be aware in Africa that there is going to be fluctuation with currencies. Some will be stronger. And it depends on a lot: cost of living, what the government prioritizes. So yeah, there is a real difference with regard to different countries being slightly more, I'd say, economically better suited to sending their students abroad. And that's just at the moment, because it could change, as it often does.
Oh, we appear to just have lost Mary. Don't worry, we're working in the background to make sure that she can join us again. But just to say, we're getting loads of your questions coming through on currency and all these issues. So keep them coming in as we start talking about the other issues as well. We want to hear from you. So while we've got David with us, let's move on to the next question. So obviously a major piece of legislation to come through the UK, which is a big market, especially for Nigeria, for people to be sending their students to, is a ban on dependence for all but postgraduate research students. So how much of an effect is this having on students from Africa choosing to come and study in the UK?
Yeah, it did. It blindsided a lot of African students, because PGT in most of our markets is the most popular. It's short, sharp. People have worked before. They may be self-funding, so they have the finances. So yes, it has been pretty impactful, and a lot of Nigerian students haven't chosen to come in the numbers they had before, because they can't bring dependents. It's very important to have that close family relationship whilst they're away studying. But with sort of markets like Nigeria, Nigerians soon realize that, look, there's still the want to study abroad, to do my, postgraduate, so either they'll just wait till they've completed it. And if there are opportunities for sort of postgraduate work, the families could come over then, or they're pivoting more to postgraduate research courses. And that's something at the Met that, we've noticed we're trying to increase the portfolio of courses we have for that. But more importantly, I think a lot of the African market finds that the admissions process for PGT and postgraduate research are very different. And it's a little bit more long-winded for, the postgraduate research, which at the moment, if we could make that a little bit more user-friendly, I think we'd, have a lot more students coming through for that, because, as I say, they still need that education, and why not get it in research?
But it's such a new piece of legislation, isn't it? And so I guess people are still getting their heads around it and how to navigate that. We've got Mary back now, which is fantastic. So we were just discussing, Mary, about the UK's ban on all but postgraduate research international students being able to bring their dependents with them in the UK. So when you're speaking to students, how much of a factor is that in where they're deciding to study?
Oh, yes, it's a major contributing factor because, first of all, the UK climate, especially for people who are going for PGT courses, who are married, would like to come along with their dependents. It, first of all, helps eases the burden, for studying and working in a new environment. And also, coming with your loved ones is a factor that can just contribute to the general success. So, yes, it has been a major issue. And that's the reason why we've seen a lot of interest around the Masters by Research courses, although the application process and the timeline for application to turnaround time is a bit sketchy and can be longer than the postgraduate taught masters, but a lot of interest have grown, for the Masters by Research course. London Met offers those courses, so I've done a lot of webinars and I saw the interest it drew. A lot of application came in, for Masters by Research course, and that just shows that a lot of people are still interested in going with their dependents. So it's a major factor, and that's why a lot of people are tilting towards the Masters by Research course. So yeah, you have a few that still are willing to go for Masters taught masters or PG taught courses, but those ones are already making the sacrifice to leave their family here. That's the ones that are married, those who are married. So if the process for Masters by Research course is a bit more seamless and straightforward, you get a lot of interest because it's still a key advantage for a family to go all together because of several benefits that comes with it. Yes, the support, the fact that you're with your family, the costs. So usually for example, when a married man decides to go to UK to study and he has family over here in Nigeria, he is incurring cost on two ends. He's living expenses in the school, maybe in London, and then he's living expense here in Nigeria. But if he's given an opportunity to move with his family, although it will cost a lot of money to move the entire family, but the only cost he'll be incurring at a particular time is the cost of settling in the new city he has gone into. So this has been a major issue or a major factor in deciding whether to go ahead to study. The first thing they're asking you is, can I go with my family? Can I go with my dependents? So yes, Masters by Research course has gained popularity as a result of this singular factor.
And do you think I'm interested to hear what both of you think. Do you think we'll start to see even more of that happening? So more of a shift towards those postgraduate research courses as time goes on?
Absolutely, because and I don't think it's a bad thing, because we'd had all our eggs in one basket. In particularly, you think of Nigeria, and sometimes it shows when things change that maybe we should have been looking at this earlier on for this particular fact of dependence. And I think it's healthier, to have a mix of PGT and the research aspect of it. So I think there will definitely be, a hunger and an upload for students wanting to do PG research courses.
I love that not putting all the eggs in one basket anymore. I think that's really good. How about you, Mary?
Yes, I'd also like to add that being in country and with my ears on the ground, being the senior international officer for London Met, I have my ears on the ground for other schools, what they are doing. And in the last intake, no, not the last intake, this current intake we are working on, there was a school that opened up its doors for Masters by Research courses and kind of toned down on the application requirements for Masters by Research course. And I tell you, as we speak, they have so many applications and so many people who pay tuition deposits, much more than they can cater for. So that I just gave you this analogy so that you know how much that can interest people. Because once they know that they need to go with their dependents, they are up for it. And yes, giving an opportunity for African students to come in and do a research courses gives first of all a mix in the cohorts, diversity in the cohorts. It brings different perspective as per research. So you begin to see a lot of research areas that African students are interested in, that can add a resource to the university. And in the end, it can just open up new areas of research that an institution will want to pursue. So with this analogy that is on ground, I saw how many applications that this particular school garnered as a result of opening their doors and toning down on the application requests for masters by research, and I know for sure that masters by research course is something that would sell, and would interest a lot of people from Africa.
I think that's a really good thing for people to know when they're looking to recruit students. So it's maybe not changing everything, it's just pivoting slightly to the way that things have been done in the past. And that's so much easier than having to rethink everything, isn't it? Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think it's a really, really important point. And something else that we know can be a bit of an issue is challenges around English language qualifications for from prospective students from Africa. So even though a lot of African countries are English speaking, there is still a requirement for English language qualifications. So, I mean, that's a big challenge, right? How do students feel when they're asked to take those kinds of tests?
From my point of view and experience, when they're asked to do CELT, especially in Nigeria, being a former British colony, that they do find it a bit egregious. Because they're taught in English. Yes, we have about 1,000 dialects in Nigeria. In other parts, I don't want to just specifically talk about Nigeria because, in many of our key markets, they're former colonial parts of Britain. So they have had, international, teachers. They've been taught in English. They do IB. IGCSE, so there's a general understanding, and they have a high level of English. Nigeria and London Met, we accept WIAC, as long as they have, C6 and above. Things that do sort of irk is things that, we're trying to introduce, and Mary has been working hard on that, is NECO. If we do WIAC, why don't we do NECO? Because when Nigerian students have had to do IELTS, they pass with flying colours. Now, we've also brought into parts of Eastern Africa that the Kenyan KCSE, we now accept that as proof of English rather than them having to do IELTS or another CELT. And also in Uganda, these are key markets for us, and it sends out a good message to potential students that they don't need to just look somewhere else, because students, let's be honest, in some instances, they don't want to do CELT. They will look for an institution that is flexible, be it they accept their indigenous qualification or they have an in-house qualification. So for us trying to recruit in these markets, we had to pivot. We have to be more forward thinking. And as it's more consumer led now, to an extent, the students have a lot more of the power. We have to be, flexible to what will work for them.
Yeah. What are the kind of conversations that you're having there, Mary, about language testing?
Yes, exactly. Just like David has said, language test was an issue, but good enough. Most schools are beginning to pivot. Most schools are beginning to be flexible around it. That is because most of our key markets, the lingua franca is English. From the start of elementary, students are being taught in English, all through their university level. So when you start telling a student to write a standard English test, it kind of raises eyebrows. But good enough, most schools are beginning to pivot around it. For London Met, we accept just WIAC C6, but we are beginning to look at, we have not approved it yet, but the market is beginning to tilt towards NECO. Now, NECO is like an alternative of WIAC. It was introduced in 1999 when I think there was clamor around WIAC, and there was a need to introduce a local exams for Nigeria, and that was when NECO was introduced. But it's the same standard with WIAC. Same, in fact, in most cases, in recent times, NECO is even said to be a little more difficult, than WIAC. So when a student have a 6 in NECO, the student is as good as whoever has a C6 as well. And this happens to and this also relates to other of our markets like Ghana, Kenya. Recently we waived the English SELT test for Kenyans and Ugandans, and it came with a wide acceptance. A lot of people were happy with this new development, given that they will not need to pay an extra amount, especially the cost involved in writing a secured language test. They'll come with you that, okay, if you don't want to take my English test, why not organize an in-house test in the school instead of having me to write another English test, which first of all, the exam situation that comes with writing a standard English test is there. The cost involved in writing a standard English is there. So it's kind of, so a lot of schools are beginning to tilt away from standard English tests and accepting either their KCSE when it comes to Kenyans, or their WASE when it comes to Ghanaians, or the WAEC or NECO when it comes to Nigerians. A lot of schools are beginning to are flexible around this because in the real sense, these are key markets. They all speak very good English, and whoever has a C6 in NECO is can speak English well enough. Yeah.
I think another thing that I'm getting from this is that there's a real need, as the keyword flexibility and pivot is something that's coming up a lot. So the real need to know your market and see where this flexibility needs to come in, but also, again, to understand the differences between each of your key markets in Africa, each of those different countries, and what those differences are. So one size does not fit all. Is that a fair comment to make?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's also working
as a fair comment
with internal stakeholders, admissions, compliance, to understand that, we're not trying to introduce these particular, indigenous qualifications because it's an easier ride, but we've done the due diligence to work out, why, they are at a level that's acceptable, and why, hamstring ourselves just because we haven't really looked into it. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of scope for potential there.
But definitely, but also maybe it's a good way to help students feel less othered. We were talking about this and we were doing some preparation for the call, that if you're making students who have learnt in English, been taught in English, it's their lingua franca, to then be expected to take an English language test, that can make people feel really othered even before they've got to their final study destination. So it's a nice way, I suppose, to help you be a bit more inclusive, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the main things, inclusivity. It's very important. You don't want to get African students and treat them differently, even though they're being taught in English. You want to, make them feel like, okay, everyone gets the same sort of treatment. And of course, it's, you've got to think of the price. It is a bit price sensitive, because if they don't have IELTS tests in one part of Nigeria, or they're fully booked, and a student has to travel to, say, like Lagos, that's extra cost for them, as well as on top of the actual cost of the test.
Absolutely. So just bear with me while I'm looking for some questions which we want to finish with from our audience. But while I'm doing that, are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with before we go into those audience questions?
For me, it's just, I think, the African market is looking increasingly, more buoyant. I mean, I think in Africa, as we say, TIA, this is Africa, things can change on the spin of a dime. And I think, the African market is understanding, it's getting to grips with currency, and there's still, most importantly, that want and desire with that youthful population to study abroad, to get those skill sets, to get those employability options, not just to go back to your home country, work anywhere in the world. So I think it bodes well for the African market, in my opinion, and that's why I love working within it.
And Mary, what about you? Some final thoughts?
Yes, so the African market is would always be key for the international education industry, and it's important that we continue to consider the dynamics that that happens to the African market, and and kind of play along with it in a way, and also consider other parts of Africa apart from the Anglophiles that speak pure English as their lingua franca. Schools can begin to consider francophone countries. So in considering countries, you can begin to put in things that can help with their English. So English, Africa has been a key market for international education. One of the reasons is because the teeming youth desire to study abroad, desire to study anywhere, or desire to have international exposure generally will always be a reason why African market is key. And secondly, the diversity, having diversity of cohorts is a key thing. And yeah, we always bring the spice on board, irrespective of where we are. So thank you.
I think that's lovely. And we're just going to finish off on getting lots of questions through about the currency issue. This is obviously something that's really preying on people's minds. So this is potentially quite a good, well, I don't know what you guys will think about it, but maybe a practical solution to this. So how easy is it for Nigerians to buy dollars to mitigate against currency fluctuations? Is that maybe a way that they can overcome some of this instability?
Well, it depends.
Okay, maybe I'll go.
Mary's had experience of it and what students have told her within, especially Nigeria and Lagos. So I'll let Mary give you a quick answer to that.
Okay, so it's a bit challenging because in the past we used to have what we call the CBN, or the official rates, and then the black market rate. So that is still prevalent. It's just that the difference between the official rate and the black market rate is not so much, or the gap in between is not so much as well. But what I advise students or parents in particular is to save up over time in foreign currency, right? So irrespective of whether you're purchasing it in the black market or officially, you can give yourself ample time to save up in the foreign currency. So, in my sojourn as a senior international officer, I've gotten to speak with a lot of parents who had their children or who have their children studying abroad, more than 2-3 children, especially in the UK. And what are the key thing I got from them was that most of them had these funds saved up in the foreign currency over a period of time. So irrespective of the currency fluctuation or devaluation, they already had the money saved up in either pounds or dollars or Canadian dollars, depending on where their children are studying. So it was easy to pay, So that is the real advice, because irrespective of official rate or black market rate, there is still this challenge of fluctuation and devaluation. You can always get foreign currency from the black market rate, but it's quite high. So the real advice would be to save up over a period of time in the currency that you'll be paying tuition fees, so that at the point of payment, it will not be so difficult, or you will not be exchanging naira for a foreign currency on the spot. Yes, that will be the
Yeah, so you heard it here, folks. Be prepared, get saving early, and have a plan, it sounds like, as well. Just, really prepare.
Even though,
I've got
sorry,
another...
even though, parts of Africa, in particular, Nigeria is a last minute market, as everyone says.
Yeah.
I think the key word is prepare in advance.
So maybe even better to advise students to wait a year or two and save and make sure that they've got all of that saved up before making the leap to come and study. Is that a good piece of advice to give?
I mean, what we do within sort of speaking to students' agents is profiling the student in a realistic manner. Are you going to meet the time frames? Do you have the money and time? Are you just going to get enough money just to get your cash, this, that, and the other? Then you get to the UK, and then there are issues with unpaid tuition fees, and that just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
Yeah.
So it's very important. We don't like to defer, but we will work with the student as best as possible. But we want to set them up, set their expectations, so they get a good value for money and a good experience throughout the whole process to when they graduate, rather than just try a quick fix for it just to crash and burn.
Yeah, great. And I've just got one final question here, just really sneakily. Sorry, Mary, just to really sneak over into the over time here. But what kinds of pre-departure support programs does London Met provide, if any, to help African students adapt to studying abroad? Is there anything that you guys have on offer to help students navigate those challenges?
Absolutely, we've got a wide range of support, pre-departure support for students. We have webinars. We had webinars that started from about October for intake for January. That started with visa support, settling down in the UK support, how to get jobs. If you're interested in working support, all of those things. And even in the course of our conversion webinars with agents, we do things around encouraging the students and helping the students settle when they eventually get on campus. So all of those supports are there. And for any student I counsel, for some reason they have my number one-on-one, they can always talk to me. Concerns about settling in the UK, concerns about settling on campus, I can always refer them to it. But institutional, from the school, from the university, right, there are webinars for helping students to settle, to depart, how to meet your offer requirements. Okay, so it starts from how to meet your offer requirements to how to meeting your CAS requirements, to pay, how to settle in London, visa requirement, all of those things are there, all of those supports are there, and they're all put together in a webinar. So now students are required to join all of these webinars, and the webinars are recorded. And when a student doesn't join, they always send the recorded version to the students to always catch up whenever they can. So the support is it's quite there.
That's great, really great to hear. I'm afraid that is all we have time for. We've covered so much ground in this, and massive thanks to both David and Mary, our wonderful panelists. Really, really great to hear all those fantastic insights from you. This is going to be available to watch back on for everybody who's registered, so you'll get a little link in your email. Make sure to watch it back, and if you have any more questions, you can get in touch with David and Mary separately. But that's sadly all that we have time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us. Bye.